Sometimes in life, one gets to meet a very special person. This happened to me when I moved to Santa Barbara. I met Mr. Andy Granatelli. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Alyce Faye. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. I'm in Andy's home, and we are down here on the beach, and we're going to talk about his career. Now, Andy, tell me where you began your life.
Dallas, Texas, 1923.
1923. So you had a long and interesting and vigorous career.
Like no other, believe me.
Tell me, now, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 2 brothers, no sisters.
So it was all boys.
All boys in the family.
Your poor mother.
That's the way it was.
But how did you get interested in cars?
That was easy. In 1935, I was listening to the radio, and I heard Kelly Patillo leading the Indy 500-mile race, and the sound of the motors got to me, and that gave me the bug, and that's what started me.
Did you start learning how to tune cars?
That came natural. I was tuning cars, and even at 12 years old, I was streets of Chicago. Cold days, the cars wouldn't start. And I'd go out there and walk up to people and say, "I'd start your car for a dime, mister." And they'd give me a dime, and I would put the dime in, use the dime as a screwdriver and open up the ignition points, set them with a dime, and the car would start. Because in those days, cars used to have the points closed up, and then when the got cold, they wouldn't start. So that was the problem 9 out of 10 times. I did that hundreds of times.
So you were an entrepreneur already.
I started early, believe me.
What did your dad do?
My dad was the grocer. He started the Piggly Wiggly chain in Dallas, Texas. He also owned the Glen Grace Casanova nightclub in Dallas, Texas. Then the Great Depression hit, and he went bankrupt like everybody else did. We moved to Chicago in 1929. He moved in the ghetto section with his brother and their family. We all lived in one little 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor. No showers, just a sink, no bathtub, one stove in the kitchen we used to have to heat up to cook and to get warm, but the rest of the house was freezing. And of course, in Chicago, we'd have below zero weather many times in the wintertime. I always think about that. You stand up against the stove and the front of you would be burning and the back you'd be freezing. So you'd have to rotate around the stove.
Did you feel deprived, though?
Oh, no, I never complained, never looked back, always looked forward, always learned from the past, and it was fun. Everything was fun. You know, we only had meat one day a week on Sundays. That's all we could afford, and that was something to look forward to. There's 2 sides of a coin. There's half a glass of water, half full or half empty. As far as I'm concerned, it's half full. Most other people think it's half empty.
I know you very well, and that is so true. I think you always have a positive and happy outlook on life.
You can do what you want to do in this world and be what you want to be, providing you have the desire, willing to put out the extra effort, have a positive mental attitude, and have the opportunity. And if you don't find the opportunity, the door of opportunity, open it. It can happen for you, anybody.
Now, where did you go to school?
Went to school all over the United States. I went to school in Dallas to start with, of course, and then Chicago and Kansas City and Baltimore, Maryland, and Sacramento, California.
Why did you keep moving?
My father kept moving. He was kept trying to find a place we could live where we could afford to live and get a job. It wasn't easy in those days. Very difficult. I was involved in the Grapes of Wrath, a story you read about and see in the movies. In real life, I was there. I did that.
Did your father ever remarry?
Yes, he did. He was married, and my stepmother's still alive, and she'll be 101 years old this December.
Did you listen to any music during this time, like anything classical on the radio? Or
Yes, when all the other kids were out playing, I used to listen to Caruso records. I had them all, and I still got them, by the way. I have all the Caruso records that he ever made, starting back in 1908 through 1921 when he died. And I used to just sit there at the vitrola and wind it up, put my ear right on the megaphone and just wind it up and play and play and play and play it. And I learned every single opera that Caruso could sing.
You were quite smart in school, I think. So smart that you actually skipped a few grades.
The first 5 years, they double promoted me 5 times in a row. But I kept transferring schools, so they kept switching me around. By the time I was 14, I was in second year high school. I had to do junior high twice, but I would have been only 12 years old. But that's the way it was. But as it worked out, of course, I only got to second grade in high school. I had to go to work for a living.
Were you the oldest?
No, I was the middle one.
Middle one. They had to go to work because the family needed
At 14
the money.
years old, I was working 7 days a week in a grocery store, grocery clerk. First I became a delivery boy, then I became a clerk.
But what did you do to get promoted?
Work hard.
Did you convince your boss that you could do something better?
I did. I was better. I worked hard. I sold people more merchandise. When I was a delivery boy, I used to sell more merchandise to people. When I was a clerk, I sold more merchandise. I became a manager. Just all you have to do is just keep your eye on the ball. Most people are interested in some kind of recreation, bowling or going out and having a good time with the boys or whatever. I mean, you got to keep your eye on the ball. If you want to get anywhere, just make up your mind what you're going to do and do it, and don't do anything else but that. He used to put about 20, 30, 40 dozen of peonies out in front of the store, and I'd sell those all out in a couple of hours. And,
Just convincing people they were so pretty.
Just
and
they
needed
walk by,
help.
just, selling the flowers, that's all. You have to have the guts to walk up to them and say, here, you want to buy these flowers, sir or ma'am, and then they buy them.
When did your brothers and you get involved in the car business?
We started early on. We both got jobs in car dealerships. I'll give you an example. I went to work at Lober Pontiac as a mechanic, and I saw that the front end man had the least amount of work to do, and he was always very clean, and he made the most money. So I decided I want to become a front end man. So when the front end man got fired or quit, I went into the boss and told him that I wanted to be the front end man. He says, you don't have any experience. I says, I know. I says, but just send me to school. And I came back and I became a front end man, and I started making more money than anybody else there in very short order. As it worked out, I also started selling service to people. And of course, the service manager got mad at me because the customers would come straight to me instead of going to the service department to get signed up. So the service manager took me into Mr. Lober's office and says he wanted me to be fired. And I said to the manager, I says, you asked for it. I said, look at your shoes. I said, so filthy greasy. I says, you step in people's cars, you wipe the cars out. Nobody wants you in their car. I says, and the way you talk to people and the way you act, make a long story short, Mr. Lober fired him instead of me.
Because you had the enterprise to understand what the customers wanted.
People want to be treated like you want to be treated. Treat people like you want to be treated. That's all you have to do.
Now, that was called Andy's Super Service, your pit stop concept, wasn't it?
Well, right at the end of World War II, my brothers and I opened a gas station called Andy's Super Service. And without ever having been to an auto race or having seen pit stops, I devised a pit stop service for the race car, for the people coming into the gas station. When a person would pull in for gas, 5 of us would jump on the car, 1 on each tire, and then on the windshields and the windows, and I would go under the hood. And, of course, every car that came in those days especially, needed some kind of work under the hood. Belts, hoses, gaskets, something. And I would check the oil, of course, and show the man the oil, either sell him an oil change if he needed it, or show him what was wrong under his hood. And we used to have cars lined up literally a block waiting to get in there because of our super service. But frankly, it was no faster than anybody else because it took so long to put the gasoline in anyway. But the people just loved the concept. You felt like you were getting taken care of,
Wow.
But they loved it.
When did you start racing?
In 1946, a man came up to me and he said he'd like to have me build a rocket car. And I didn't know anything about racing, and they didn't been to a racetrack. And he says he wanted me to build it. I said, okay, I'll build it. We went out and got a 1934 Ford Indianapolis race car. This was in 46. And we took this car and we converted it into a rocket car. He gave us these rockets, which were JATO tubes, JATO rockets from the JATO tube, used to assist aircraft to take off and stuff. And I put one of them in the rocket holder. It held 8. And we pushed a button and fired off, and it fired a little flame out about 3 feet long and fell to the ground. So we said, oh, hell, this thing doesn't really work. It's just a showman thing, So I put all 8 rockets in at one time and wired them all together and went out on Highway 83 in Chicago. And my brother Joe was following me, and we got the car as fast as it could go without rocket assist. We got up to 122 miles an hour, which was fast as it would run. And I hit the button for the rocket, and I had this 2-man car. Boom! It was a big explosion, and the whole night lit up, and it was unbelievable. Put a flame out about 300 feet long and high as the telephone wires on both sides of the road. I mean, it just couldn't believe it. And the car got up to about 180 miles an hour. And I looked at the guy alongside of me, he looked at me, we thought we were on the way to the moon. Meanwhile, this is on a 2-lane highway, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch dark, I looked coming towards me is an old man and an old lady driving a 37 Chevrolet. They're heading towards me. And, of course, they must have thought the first UFO was landing. And they were horrified. They drove right off into the field. And, of course, fortunately, they didn't get hurt. But, I mean, I'll never forget. I could look right into his eyes because everything was lit up like daylight, Anyway, that was the beginning of the rocket car. Then we went on all the circuits all around the country. That was the first race car I ever drove. I tell you this quickly. I had no experience driving a race car, hadn't even been to a racetrack. And when I got to Keokuk, Iowa, was the first place I was going to run, I saw a picture of myself on a billboard standing in front of the car, full-size billboard. And it says, Antonio Granatelli, world-famous international speed ace. I said, my God. I mean, first of all, my name is not Antonio. What do you mean world-famous? I wasn't even famous for driving anything. I pulled into the coffee shop to have a cup of coffee, and a lady asked me for my first autograph before I ever saw a racetrack. We get to the track, huckster in front of the fairgrounds saying, come in and see Antonio Granatelli, world-famous international speed ace, 650 miles an hour on a half-mile dirt track. My God, that's preposterous. The world's land speed record was 434 miles an hour in a straight line. If you ran 80 miles an hour around that track, it was fast. And he's telling everybody to go around 650. So I said, my God, what have I got myself into here, Make a long story short, I get in the car, and of course the grandstands are full. These are old Keokuk, Iowa. All the tracks throughout the Midwest and South are all 50 years old or older. They're horse tracks. And I come out of turn one, and of course the people are 3, 4, 5, 6 deep against the fence. At racetracks, people go right up against the fence because they want to get right close to the race car. And I come down the straightaway, and I hit one button at a time, not all 8 at once. And of course I get 8 simultaneous explosions down the straightaway. Each time it explodes, of course, a big flame shoots out of the thing, and the flame turns into a white smoke. So as I start coming on the straightaway, hitting the buttons, the people start trying to get out of the way of the fire and the explosions and everything. And of course, the noises are horrendous of the race car itself and the explosions. I get on the backstretch, and the entire grandstand is engulfed in white smoke. So nobody can see me. Therefore, they have no idea how fast I run. Now, the promoter never dreamt that. I didn't dream that. Nobody ever expected that. It was just one of those things that happened that made everybody wonder what happened.
Well, there was a hint of mystery to it
Well,
then.
here's what the best part was. Not only the sound and explosion, but the explosion caused all the pigeon dung for 50 years in the rafters to fall on the public. And they were all being saturated with this pigeon dung. So it wasn't not only the smoke and the fire. Anyway, it was funny. Meantime, there's 2 farmers up in the grandstand, and they're sitting in front of my brother Joe, and the guy says, that ain't no 650 miles an hour, maybe 550, but not 650. I must have run 80 miles an hour around the track, which is fast.
I think you said that one of your favorite people was Houdini the Magician.
Yes, I never met him, of course, but I read about him and heard about him and stuff on TV in later years, or no TV in the early years. But I was a great fan of Houdini.
I assume that you're in 18 million halls of fame.
24 to be exact.
I wasn't too far off, was I? But Andy, that's not what you're known for here in Montecito. Here in Montecito, you're known for your philanthropy. You had Jay Leno one time, didn't you, who got up as a surprise. How did you get to Santa Barbara?
I owned a couple of ranches up in Hollister Ranch, and I lived in Calabasas. And I used to drive up weekends. I would stop at Tootie's for breakfast on Coast Village Road here. And then I started driving around looking at houses, and I saw this Italian villa that knocked me for a loop, Sotto El Monte at Sycamore Canyon on 12 acres. And I just said to myself, I have to have this house. And so I made a bid on it. It took me about a year to get it. And we moved here in 1987, late 87.
Do you have children?
I have 2 boys. One lives in Arizona and one lives here.
Did they ever race cars or do anything like that?
My older son followed my footsteps, and he raced cars, had a team and all that. My younger son is involved in finances.
I think when you bought the big estate, didn't Dolly have a big rose garden? Or
I planted 1,000 rose bushes for her.
Oh, I can't imagine.
The landscaping in Sotto El Monte is second to none. There's nothing else in town except lotus land that competes with it.
Do you ever go on holiday, or do you just stay here and enjoy Santa Barbara?
Always mix business with pleasure, so I never do anything that didn't have meaning to it.
What's your favorite book?
Jack London's Call the Well.
My favorite book was one of the ones I read about you called Call Me Mr. 500. But it's a fascinating read, Andy. I mean, it's like an adventure story. It's not like reading someone's biography. Is there anything left that you'd like to achieve or that you'd like to do that is important to you?
Well, I would just keep my same philosophy of making people happy. That's what I really like to make people happy. That's my goal in life. I don't have any plans to change.
Andy, thank you for being my guest.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Andy Granatelli. I'm often asked why tune-up masters can do a major tune-up for less than most car dealers and garages. Simple. Our volume is tremendous. We've tuned over 1 million cars. We do everything to make your car's engine run its very best.